What's going on, guys? This is Ilya here. Before we jump into the topic, I'd like to remind you that this video has a text version of this content in the form of an article with a greater level of detail and some examples from my personal experience. You can find it completely for free in my Telegram channel. Feel free to subscribe to it using the link down below the video. Also, feel free to comment and subscribe to my YouTube channel because this is how you guys encourage and motivate me to keep on going with my EBV CFS journey. Of course, I'm pretty self-motivated to do that, right? But this is how you encourage me to share my experience with you. Okay, let's go into today's topic. It's pretty broad, as you can get from the title. Right, we are talking about the whole CFS, ME, post-viral CFS thing right here. And I do understand that there's a lot more to EBV to be a root cause of this state. It can be caused not only by EBV, but also by CMV, cytomegalovirus. It can be caused by human herpes virus type 6. For example, I also know some cases when it can be caused by some gut bacteria, Helicobacter pylori, for example, and probably a lot more and more root causes to the CFS ME thing, right? But I believe that the root of my problem is EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, and therefore I'm going to be talking about my CFS experience in conjunction to EBV, right? So, what's EBV? EBV stands for Epstein-Barr virus, obviously, so it's a virus. It's also known as human herpes virus type 4, right? But I propose to maybe look into the nature of the virus first of all. So what's a virus essentially? Basically, it's just genetic information, a DNA or RNA, encapsulated into the protein capsid and surrounded by a lipid membrane, right? So this is what a virus is, and this is what an EBV is. EBV is a DNA virus. EBV is believed to be a root cause of such diseases as infectious mononucleosis, also referred to as glandular fever in some countries. So this is that early acute stage of the disease, which probably you've went through, just like as me, right? It works to know that EBV is usually spread through saliva while sharing drinks, food, or simply kissing. It also can be transmitted through blood while blood transfusion and also while transplanting organs and stem cells. But I believe these are rare cases, right? It's also important to understand that it's believed that more than 90% of adult population on planet Earth are infected with Epstein-Barr virus. But the tricky thing here is that even though more than 90% are infected, only some fraction of this population have ever experienced the symptoms, and it has manifested itself as infectious mononucleosis. Only in some fraction of those guys, right? And only in some fraction of those who experienced infectious mononucleosis, there is a minor fraction of people which are struggling with some long-term, long-lasting symptoms, consequences, which now we're calling chronic fatigue syndrome, post-viral fatigue syndrome, etc., etc. So probably you and me, we are on the very lowest level, on the very deep of this shitty waterfall, right? So another very important thing to discuss is how Epstein-Barr virus actually works, what it does in our body. So essentially, once it gets to our body, the first thing it does is it infects epithelial cells in our oropharynx, in our throat, essentially. Once infected, these epithelial cells, it travels from them to the lymph tissue in our throat. So what's lymph tissue in our throat? Primarily, it's our tonsils. Tonsils are basically made of lymph tissue. And so the virus infects some specific immune cells in our lymph tissue called B lymphocytes or B cells. It's essentially, most of the cases, targets those B cells, right? And I would put a little remark here that in some of the cases they are pretty rare. The virus targets not the B cells, but and or NK, natural killer, and T cells. And those cases are usually referred to as chronic active Epstein-Barr virus. So chronic active Epstein-Barr virus guys unfortunately have T cells and NK cells infected by EBV. It's very bad because our NK and T cells are basically a defense mechanism or a weapon against the viruses. Once EBV infected our B lymphocytes, incubation period of the virus begins, and it lasts for 2 to 6 weeks typically. And after that, at some point of time, what happens is that virus inside those infected B lymphocytes starts traveling using our blood system, using our lymph system, starts traveling to another places in our organisms where it can find lymph tissue. And it appears to be our liver and spleen because there's a lot of lymph tissue there. And our lymph nodes, of course. So, and then what virus does is that it uses our tonsils, our lymph nodes, most commonly cervical lymph nodes, neck lymph nodes, or jaw lymph nodes, spleen and liver as a basis for further replication. So now, apart from that, there are a lot more and more about how the virus works, what it does in our body. There are so much side effects or indirect effects of this virus to our body. I've studied lots of content, I've read lots of papers on that thing, and so here's the list of what it does indirectly to our body. So it affects the epithelium of large and small intestines, causing diarrhea. So basically maybe this is the reason why some of the guys out there are having problems with their stomach, with their gut. It leaves marks on mucous membranes of ENT organs, which makes it easier for bacteria to attach to these indicators, to these markers. So basically what that means is that it makes us more susceptible to bacterial infection in our throat, in our ENT organs. So we are getting more susceptible to getting strep throat, for example, right? Then it interferes with the thermoregulation of the body, does not allow our body to raise the temperature during the viral infection, because raising temperature is one of the essential mechanisms of the body to fight the virus, because the virus don't live on the elevated body temperature, right? So it somehow affects our nervous system, our brain, and it prevents our body to raise the temperature. By the way, maybe this is the reason why I haven't developed any low-grade fevers anymore when the acute phase ended. Like, I feel all these flu-like feverish symptoms, but I don't have low-grade fever. It reduces the activity of cell receptors to vitamin D, okay? And even more than that, it prevents vitamin D to be transformed from inactive form, which is stored during the warm period of time. It prevents it from transformation into the active form. So this just blows my mind, to be honest. The virus itself, like I said, is not alive. Yeah, the virus itself is not alive. It's not alive if not being inside a host. It's only alive within the host because it uses the energy and the replication machinery of the cells to create copy of itself. Outside of host, it's not alive. Like I said, it's just a genetic material without any organs. And so this creature, this thing, this material which is not alive, somehow knows that vitamin D is a very potent immune agent, and it prevents our body from using that agent. This is just crazy. I mean, then it also blocks the absorption of vitamin A, the same thing here, and blocks zinc transportation. Now, important one is that EBV damages cells' mitochondria. What's mitochondria? Essentially is one of the cell's organs responsible for making energy, basically. So this can be a reason for the fatigue, which is one of the major symptoms of all of the CFS, post-viral CFS, EBV, ME, whatever, sufferers. fatigue is one of the major symptoms which almost every guy out there has, and one of the explanations for that in theory might be that EBV damages cells mitochondria, which are responsible for energy production. And then it's important for us to understand how our body responds, or at least how it is meant to respond to EBV infection. So first of all, I already mentioned two types of immune cells we have, NK natural killer cells and T cells, more specifically CD8 plus T cells. So those guys are responsible for killing infected B cells. Because as we remember, B cells are getting infected with the virus, probably they are starting acting, not as usual, not functioning properly, and NK and T cells are responsible for detecting those infected B lymphocytes and killing them. Number two is that B cells should get activated by another T lymphocytes, but CD4 plus T lymphocytes. What it means is that B cell transforms into so-called plasma cell, and this plasma cell is responsible for production of specific EBV, in this case EBV antibodies. So this is our specific immunity to the virus. Essentially, these are the antibodies for which we are testing from time to time, our VCA EBV, EBNA EBV, early antigen, etc., etc. So activated B cells are responsible for production of those antibodies. And other immune system cells, like monocytes, are killing pure viral particles in our bloodstream, but probably during the early stages of infection, while the virus circulating in our bloodstream in the pure as pure DNA particles, so to speak. So now you see, from what I've said, the problem is pretty clear. The problem with EBV, why this is a particularly bad virus, is because it's not only does all kind of bad to our body, damages our cells, blocks various nutrients transportation, etc., etc., but the major cause of all of the problems guys with long-lasting symptoms, like myself, for example, has, I believe, is because virus is basically attacking our weapon or our defense mechanisms, which are B cells, right, who are producing antibodies, who can be activated to produce antibodies, and our NK cells and T cells, like I said, in some cases, virus can damage those guys, infect those guys. And so basically what it does to us is it gets us unarmed, because we do not have our weapon to fight with it. Our weapon gets corrupted, our defense system gets corrupted against EBV. Our immune system gets weaker and weaker over the time, trying to fight off the increasing and kill the increasing amount of infected cells. So we need to find some ways to regain the immune system strength, to regain the quality and quantity of our immune cells, to get all of the infected cells killed and our system freed from the virus. So basically, guys, that's it for the first video of this series. There's more to come. I'll discuss the symptoms which guys with ME/CFS are suffering for, including myself. I'll discuss the triggers which I've observed in my experience, which can trigger relapses or crashes. And of course, I think the only thing which really matters in that way is various types of therapy, lifestyle adjustments, possible kinds of treatments that are available out there, which we have to try, we have to test, we have to practice, and share the feedback of how it works to get out of this disease, right? So guys, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my YouTube channel to support me, and see you next time. Bye bye.